So my name is Julie Campbell. I'm an architect here in Seattle. I have a residential firm with my husband, Buzz Tenenbaum. And we have been doing design, build, remodels and additions and new houses in this greater Seattle area for almost 30 years now. We've just recently closed our construction arm down and we're functioning as an architecture firm. And the reason I've become interested in giving this lecture and blogging about Craftsman homes is because we've noticed over the 30 years we've been practicing here in Seattle that there is again a resurgence in interest in Craftsman homes. When I say again, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Great. When I say again, that's because when we first moved here in the late 80s, there was a lot of, how do you want to call it, developer neighborhoods going in the suburbs where they would build a big bunch of tract houses, and they called them Craftsman. And there are, you can see big homes scattered throughout our neighborhoods here in town that are what I would call quasi-craftsmen, and they're usually really big. I call them pumped up houses. And I hope I'm not offending anybody, but it's been my personal opinion that these bigger houses are trying to be craftsmen because there was something about craftsmen that people love. What we're seeing now in our firm is many clients come to us and they want either a new Craftsman home or they want a second-story addition on their Craftsman home, their original Craftsman home that was probably built in the early 1900s. And they love what this home is to them because it really is a Craftsman home. So it was done right. And they want to honor that and they cherish that about it. And so what's curious to me is what is it that's generating every 20 or 30 years this reinterest in Craftsman homes. So what I want to talk about today is the history behind the architectural intention in Craftsman architecture, what those elements are architecturally, and then how that can inform us in our modern day with remodeling or building new Craftsman homes in a way that is true to the intention of the style, which will help you achieve what it is you're trying to achieve. So just so I can tailor my talk here today to my audience, how many of you are interested in remodeling or building or doing something with a home or you're wanting a home? Oh wow, good number of people. Okay, so I'll be sure to talk about that. But what I'm going to talk about first is a history of the style and why it came to be. So I'm going to go fast because there's a lot to cover here. So at the turn of the century, around 1905, Gustav Stickley came out with a magazine called the Craftsman magazine. And as you can see right here, it says an illustrated monthly magazine edited and published by Gustav Stickley. He's the furniture guy. In the interest of better art, better work, and a better and more reasonable way of living. And so the reason this period of design style emerged was in reaction to, in the late 1800s, the onset of the industrial era, which is kind of an accepted period of history that saw mechanization kind of sweeping across the industrialized world, or the developed world. England, the east coast of the United States, Germany, where masses of people were starting to leave their villages, their little handcrafted homes, and agrarian lifestyle, and move to bigger urban areas like cities and large towns to work in warehouses where there was steam mechanization, the start of petroleum-based mechanization. So basically the world was becoming industrialized. And so people were leaving a way of living that they had been experiencing for dozens and dozens of generations. It was a whole paradigm shift across the developed world. And as people did this, you can think of images in your mind of warehouses with child labor and sweatshops and working terrible hours. And these people would be living in living situations that were not very nurturing to their souls, especially having come from little villages where they could get their eggs from the chicken out the door, that kind of thing. So people were feeling very alienated. and probably feeling like big elements of their quality of life have suffered. And so the development of the arts and crafts style emerged out of that. So the arts and crafts style developed in England and Scotland, in Ireland. So think of people like Charles McIntosh, fashion designers, but there was this whole, the artists of the era were starting to think about going back to a simpler, more rustic, more nature-inspired way of living, way of expressing themselves. Art was at that period called the Romantic style. And so there was an architectural style that grew out of the same movement, which led to the Craftsman style. And so, and that's why the sentence at the top there, better work, better, more reasonable way of living, really appealed to the masses of people. Unfortunately, it didn't last very long, which is curious to me. So,
what defines it as Craftsman as opposed to another 1910 house? My friend has a 1910 house, but I don't know if it would be a Craftsman or not. I think a Craftsman is a smaller one-story.
Yes, I'm going to talk about that
right
now. So in this last slide, what I didn't point out was because it was so popular, you could buy plans or get plans for free and buy house kits. When we first came to Seattle, we bought a little house kind of like that over in Queen Anne, little bungalow, very modest little bungalow. We found in our historic research that it was bought through Sears Roebuck catalog for $1,800. And so there was a lot of logging going on here at the time. There were companies that bought these kits and would build these houses all over Seattle. So many of the little Craftsman homes you're talking about are one-story or story-and-a-half homes. Many of them were kits. All of them had some kind of crafty detail in them because they were hand-built, and this whole kind of movement that I'm describing to you is all about kind of getting back to hand-built elements in your world versus mechanically built. The idea to make people feel like they had a connection with their craft, with the earth, with nature, with what it was that maybe made us feel like we had value as human beings. And so what I think is most interesting, as I see over the decades I've been practicing, that we're going through a resurgence of interest in this style, and I personally think it has something to do with now we're in an age of computerization, and people are sitting at desks all day long. And you see a rise of what's called crafter movement and handicraft, and I think that's all part of the same thing re-emerging again, because we don't feel connected to things that are handmade and an expression of human hand. The whole philosophy of this was to live simply and surround yourself with natural things. And so therefore these houses were not big and unostentatious. They were small. They were one-story houses, story-and-a-half houses. But attention was given to the detailing of them, so they had a richness about them. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
So here's an example of a kit house, like ours. It was $1,500. This is an example of what I was speaking to earlier in the lecture of a developer-built house. And in my mind, these two images really encapsulate the difference between the two, something that's more honest and something that's pasting like a pastiche of elements. So really, very quickly, basic elements are in a legitimate Craftsman home, whether it's old or new, the main element is a big sheltering roof. Huge overhangs, low, not a steep pitch, and it's holding the house kind of sheltering it low to the ground. The house kind of spreads out on the ground, it's connected to the ground. And everything that is considered in the design of this house has to do with sitting, hugging the landscape, being part of the landscape. So you always find a big front porch. You'd always find the horizontality of the structure, the posts and the beams exaggerated. And of course, everything is underneath this big sheltering roof. This house, by contrast, yes, there are big overhangs, but it's more vertical design. The structural elements here and here are just pastiches, they're not structural. And it's really not connected with the landscape, even though the builder has made an effort to bring rocks up. There's none of those rocks out in front, it's just kind of sitting on the landscape. So that in a nutshell is kind of the difference. What I'll do now is go very quickly through, these are original Craftsman homes, mostly in the Bay Area, and just point out these same elements. All of them have a very big sheltering roof, big overhangs. Often the structural elements are expressed as a way of embellishment. The horizontality is always very dominant. Often the ground form, what I call ground form, is like rock or masonry or something that's of the ground, grows up into the house, like it becomes these posts, and then the structural posts sit on them. And often the posts are canted, so it's like the ground is growing up and meeting the structural pieces that come and sit on it. So there's this interface between outside and inside, or landscape and build. More of the same, always the same kind of elements. So these last few houses I've shown you are kit houses, or modest, common person houses. These next few are in a totally different category. Same elements, but these are custom built, custom designed homes. Most of them in the Bay Area. Many of them have burnt down since the early 1900s. And these are architects like Bernard Maybeck, and Green & Green is kind of a very famous architect, pair of brothers. And these houses, of course, are heartbreakingly beautiful. All these elements I'm describing to you exaggerated. I mean, just, these rocks you'll probably find in this house. The chimney is made of these same rocks. These houses were very expensive at the time. These houses were also, actually, Green & Green designed this one. This is the Campbell house. Procter & Gamble, Procter & Gamble. This house is kind of considered the epitome of the Craftsman style. It's incredibly beautiful. These houses are all in Pasadena. And Green & Green, they called this house a bungalow. And a bungalow, when they used that term, they invented that term. And they meant it to mean a low-lying house of this style. And Green & Green also designed this little shack on the beach in California that had no heat, no lighting, nothing. It was just this little shack. It was also called a bungalow. So they used the term to reflect the style. Curiously, to me, I know that when the love of this style kind of ended abruptly in 1930, around that time, bungalow from then on came to be seen as kind of a derogatory term. I don't know why that is, but when the architectural styles change every 20 or 30 years. There. Oh. I'm going to have to come running back and forth. Sure. No. I'm sorry if I've been blocking your view. Where was it?
Change the perception.
So in the 30s, architectural styles changed. Right now we're in kind of this modern era where everybody loves houses. But in the 30s, styles appreciation shifted to neoclassical, neocolonial, and everything really went off down that road. So there was everybody abandoned, modern taste abandoned the bungalow Craftsman paradigm and moved towards historical, neo-historical styles. And I personally think, kind of interesting, like today, that was the start of when conflict around the globe was heating up again prior to World War II. And I think when global stress is high, people revert to loving historical styles because it's like it's safe, it's something they can relate to. So let's see. see, where are we going from here? Oh, this is the front door to the Campbell house. So, you know, again, all the same elements, huge overhanging roof, emphasis on the horizontal everywhere, trying very hard to make this two-story house look like it's also low to the ground and not looming like a big monster house, although this is a big monster house. And then, as my slide on the front door brings me up to the point where as you enter into the house, it's filled with hand craftsmanship. Stained glass, you know, hand rubbed stained oak all through the house and polished, all kinds of built-ins. So I'll talk for a minute about interiors in general. The same thing was applied. This is an exaggeration of the structure. This is a big structural beam in a load-bearing wall. But even where things aren't structural, emphasis on the horizontal, chunk it up, keep it simple, very rustic, handcrafted. The bricks of the chimney. Here you've got a bench seat. They call this an ingle nook. And then this device is very common where, for the first time, these houses were taking out walls. They were dematerializing the inside so that one room would flow to the other. So you're increasing kind of interaction between rooms, kind of like we like to live today, instead of having separate little rooms. And this device, where instead of a wall here with a door, you would be able to see in around so the rooms are somewhat connected. These things allow some kind of spatial separation. The room that I'm standing in here might have been a dining room or a bigger living room or something. But this device and the bench seat and the way they add embellishment is something that we can certainly bring into our homes today. The big difference between these homes, especially the same idea here, especially these very handcrafted, expensive homes. When you think about building a Craftsman house or remodeling a Craftsman house in today's market, big difference in the cost of building these homes. And so, of course, to build a house like this now, it would just cost you a fortune. So what I look at in these pictures are the kinds of things I'm pointing out to you. Like, if you want to have spaces that are connected to each other, we all want houses that are more open. Like our clients come to us and they say they want to open up the house so that it's more, they want to open up the living kitchen dining rooms, it's kind of a classic one. And if you didn't have these things, for instance, in this house, it would be this great big room that you'd have to figure out how to furnish and create separate zones in it, right? So the way of using the ceilings and the wainscoting in certain rooms, and especially this device here, is something you can still do and not have to have a lot of money to do it.
Excuse me, I'm a real estate appraiser,
Yeah.
and like, I could never put down that that was a bungalow. If I was appraising that, I mean, it'd get bounced. They'd say, what are you talking about, a bungalow? That's a two-story. I mean, a bungalow in our parlance is a smaller, you know, one-story. And
yeah, I grew up thinking a bungalow. Of course, I grew up in the East Coast, but the bungalow there was some very modest one-story house. It kind of spread out, almost like a ranch style. So I think what you're describing is kind of what I experienced, and you think of a bungalow as being a certain kind of a look. And that's because the term became used in a more derogatory fashion.
oh, yeah, and they're less expensive homes typically. I mean, they're smaller and one-story. And
originally, the Campbell house was called a bungalow.
yeah, okay. I mean, technically, I'm sure that's correct. But
So here I just want to point out again the ingle nook on the fireplace, creating a small intimate area in the larger area of the house. So think about as you're designing your own house or remodeling anything, the idea being same as the outside of the house, to try and create a world in your home, create your home to be a world where you have a range of spaces, large ones and small ones, but the way you create the intimacy is to create kind of sheltering areas, like the big roof sheltering the house in the big picture. Around this fireplace is an intimate area with the form of the architecture kind of creating this sheltering space. So it works at kind of a range of sizes. Here I just wanted to point out a couple of things. Homes often had beautifully handcrafted tiles. That's like when you start thinking about finished goods and fixtures in your home, anything you can bring in that has this handcrafted feel will again increase this sense of intimacy and care and attention to a house that's different from out there in the modern world, which was again, the same philosophy. The other thing I want to point out is that most of these homes, including our little home that we had when we got here, had wainscoting. And so the ceiling might be 9 feet high, but this wainscoting, which is probably a little bit above my head, has the effect of, first of all, making the room feel warm, because there's always wood in it, but also kind of brings it down, creates another horizontal plane in your perception of the room, and makes it again feel a little bit more human scale, because you're bringing the height down. And you'll see in all these pictures, I'll go back up a little bit, they all have this in some way or another. Here's a kitchen. This is the Campbell house again. What I want to say here, there is again, is the other aspect of the original Craftsman homes, especially the nicer ones, built-ins like crazy. You have a built-in for your ironing board. You have a built-in for a new telephone. You have a built-in for, well, you name it, a bed would come out of a drawer. And again, this is all because labor was so expensive. So you wouldn't do that so much nowadays, but maybe in your remodel or your new house, you would find key places where you could do a built-in. Doing paneling or trim around the top is a pretty inexpensive way to create this look and feel in your home. And a key focus area that has a built-in gets you a lot of bang for your buck. So here I'm going to show you, I'm going to go through these really quickly because time. Yeah. These are pictures I took recently in the Wallingford and Ravenna area. So these are more modest Craftsman homes. You will probably recognize a number of them. Again, I'm just going to point out the same kinds of things. Here you're seeing, you know, some very nice landscaping. These people obviously realize that the rock's moving up into the house. They put a new retaining wall in front that kind of added to that element. So it feels like the house is really nestled in well to the landscape. It's a hard thing to do when you're sitting up on a hill, because the house is up above you. But I think this is pretty successful. Big porch. These windows in Craftsman homes are always banks of tall windows, so that overall they look horizontal. Embellishment on the big horizontal beam up top. Again, look at the banks of windows, horizontal windows, not punched single windows, to emphasize the horizontality. Look at the big overhangs on that. It's a very thick fascia board. That's this piece here, to emphasize the roof. A little bit of detail here. Again, look at all the roofs. So this is, I would call this a story and a half. It's probably a pretty big house for a Craftsman, but it doesn't feel big. This one's, there was a big Japanese influence that was prevalent in the Craftsman style. That's because in the early 1900s, Frank Lloyd Wright, who was doing what we call now Prairie School Craftsman style, and also Claude Monet, these people all went over to Japan for the first time and brought back influence of rural Japan architecture, which is really the same kind of elements I'm talking about. Huge roofs with big overhangs, clunky, big, simple structure. This one I love. Look at the clinker brick that just is all through here and goes up into the chimney. That's really hard to do now. We struggle with that because it's so expensive. And that's why that first slide I showed you where the rock was there in the house, but then the owner spent some money on the rock landscape to kind of give that impression. Because to do this on a house now is just exorbitantly expensive. You can do it with concrete. It doesn't have the same textural quality. The texture is really important. But if you bring the concrete out into the landscape for retaining walls and garden walls and things, it helps. Same, you know, lovely brick, a little bit of handmade detail here in the chimney. So the texture in these houses is really a big part of it. Different column details here. This one on the right is is more of the prairie school style. So the houses are bigger, full 2 stories, but the roofs are really big. The overhangs are flat. So again, it's the horizontal. Think of prairie, and then you build with prairie. That's where the word came from. more of the Japanese influence. The kick-ups on the roof. So if you're building a new house, that's a really easy thing to do. On these two, I had in here for color palettes because that Craftsman magazine that I purchased the first one, in one of those magazines, it's a whole issue devoted to color palette for Craftsman houses, and they're all very natural colors like ochres and colors of vegetable dyes, that kind of thing. So the colors can be fun and pretty, but they're earthy colors. They're natural colors. So now I want to talk about second-story additions, because in our experience, that's the hardest thing to achieve. Somebody comes to us and has a Craftsman home, they want to put a second-story addition on it. Often they want to have as much space up there as possible, like a master suite and 2 bedrooms with a kid's bath. Do we get that a lot? Yes. And imagine putting a full footprint on this house. It would be like this big box on top. This thing on the house. So it's a challenge we really wrestle with. This house, I'm pretty sure that's a second-story addition. And you can see where they've tucked this dormer back in here. It's a small amount of space. But then you start to get this assemblage of roof forms that enhances the house. I think it's done really well. Not a big second-story addition. Here's a 2-story, probably an original 2-story Craftsman. This house, I think, is amazing. So this is a big house. And I can't tell if the second story is new or not. It goes all the way to the back. But they've kept this big sheltering roof form. They've got the porch. This wall steps in a little bit from that. So they sacrificed a foot or so on each side of this dormer. But it's a big second story. And I think it's this element here that's been retained that really makes this successful. I can't tell how much of this is new or old, but what I'm seeing in this house that I think is successful is this big roof form that's maintained. I can't tell if this is the same plane as that, but whatever the case is, this roof has been maintained. This insert, I think, is brilliant because it helps the feeling of an exchange between inside and outside. And then there's, layers of roofs. This pops out to help keep this from being a single great big wall.
A question.
Yeah.
So this guy was not a craftsman, right? Like it's very vertical. The roof is very steep.
Say the first part again.
This didn't used to be craftsman's, right? Because you said it's an add second story that kept the roof. But the roof is too steep for a craftsman.
Well, yes, but there are craftsmen who have steeper roofs, and they're more of a like a cottage style. Craftsmen, I'm contradicting myself, but there are many craftsmen that are more, I think of them like gnomes' homes or something, where it's more cottagey and less bungalow, but it's still considered a craftsman. What does make this craftsman in my mind is again the very strong horizontal, the porch, the bracket. So, I can't tell if this was an original smaller home and this is all new. I don't know, but it certainly does have craftsman elements. This is an original house, obviously. It's a big 2-story house, and what I find pretty amazing about this house is the number of roofs. You could call this the house of 7 gables. And again, all the rock growing up. The other thing that I think helps this house feel not so big is that you've got a lot of different texture going on. The ground floor is different from the upper floor. But those big roofs and brackets, look at this stuff. This is amazing. There's a lot of popping in and out. Very, very spacious, very rich spatially. This, I think, is a new house here in Wallingford. This is a big house, but it has definite craftsman elements about it. Big roofs, a lot of roofs, the brackets, the in and out of the spatial in and outs. Calling it craftsman is probably kind of a stretch, but I think you can take the skill in whoever designed this and apply it to the same kind of elements of say, putting a second story on a craftsman house. So here's the house we're working on right now. So original little Craftsman house. It's over on Queen Anne. The owner wanted a master suite and 2 kids' bedrooms in the back. And a new staircase coming up into this, so it's one of these challenges where you had to put a big second story on top of this lovely little house. So I was able to convince the owner to at least, and it doesn't really show up too well on this slide, but this wall here is 6 feet back from this wall. So as you look up at it up from the street, that second story will really step back up there. So it will maintain this facade of the house is still what you read as the dominant element. And we did things around the back, like have kind of bay windows projecting out on brackets and that kind of thing. We took a cue from the way the siding was broken up with banding around the house. So this band here goes all the way around. So, it's split up into upper and lower different siding. Pretty challenging, but... and here's another one where our client wanted a Craftsman house, and they wanted as much square footage as they could get. So if a client comes to you and says that, I mean, how do you deal with that, right? But here are the things that we try to incorporate. One of the things that's really important about all these houses I've showed you is that you don't step up like 4 or 5 steps into the house. You want to keep the house as low to the ground as possible. So if you can step up onto this patio probably will become much bigger when we get the landscape plan worked out. The idea is to move from the landscape seamlessly into the house without feeling like you're leaving the landscape and going up into the house. So porch, big structure on the porch. This is set back from this. You see the corbels there holding this out. Again, it's in here. Big overhangs, brackets, banding, banks of windows.
What's that thing looks like a flower box?
This thing here?
Yes.
That's holding a window seat.
Oh, I see.
Can you see it?
Yeah, I get it.
How's my time? Not so bad. So this is a lovely little Craftsman home that the owner wanted a master suite. They thought chunked on top of the house. And instead what we did is there's a little garage over to the side of the house. The driveway comes out here, and there's this little old garage, like, 1908 garage. And we decided to put the second story addition on top of that. So actually you don't see it. Just there's the roof of this thing here. So we didn't want to destroy the beauty of what they had. So here's the garage back in here, kind of there. Here's the second story addition. And we offset it so that you have this porch area under here. They have a little sauna in there. And so it really adds to the quality of your backyard now. There's the sauna. This is their bedroom upstairs, so it's kind of a modest bedroom. It's not a big bedroom. Key elements here, bank windows, niche for a dresser. The dresser is a Craftsman style dresser. Really simple moves, but in the right hardware. It maintains the feel of their Craftsman downstairs. A little attention to the quality of the tile, but got a handmade feel about it. This is a new house. So this is up on Lopez Island. And the owners wanted kind of a Craftsman style house, but they wanted very open space. So it's a really simple exterior volume, really big overhanging gables. There's a loft up here, get light down into it. But a lot of this space is big open space, which is kind of counter to what Craftsman wants to be on the interior. So we did a lot of things on the inside. Here's going into the door. So there's a nook right inside the door to create kind of an entry zone, transition zone. Notice the tile moves right inside. There's no threshold. So you step up on the porch and the tile moves you right in. So we're trying to do this exchange between inside and outside with the floor material. In the big room here, this is the light monitor on top that you saw in that first photograph. This is the living room, so we create a lot of built-ins, a nook around the fireplace, window seat. It's a tall volume, so we did this banding at 8 feet everywhere throughout the house to try and help you feel like you're not in this vast shopping mall space. I'm exaggerating that point. things. This is like Craftsman light or Craftsman refined, right? It's very simple, but it gives the feeling of the warmth, the handcraft, the natural materials, the horizontality, little Craftsman brackets, kind of a hand-cubed floor. But it's obviously a modern building. This is their bedroom. So we built a nook around the headboard. And you go behind here, and there's a little office area, but that banding that I'm talking about is all this area here. It matches out of that. The horizontal elements are carried throughout the whole house. These are details in the house. Look, see, a built-in for the toilet paper. So this is, ceilings were high in this house. They were 9 feet, and hence this banding everywhere that I'm talking about. So little places like that where you could find inexpensive ways to create kind of a hand-built-in aspect to it. And then this house, again, it begs, an interpretation of the word craftsman. A lot of people call these houses Queen Anne Foursquare or bordering on Prairie style. This is a full 2-story house, usually square. The formal areas in front, the kitchen in the back. So these folks wanted to open it up inside. I don't know that I would call this Craftsman per se, but again, the elements are all the same. So they wanted to open up the living room and the dining room, so you have this big cased opening. And then they wanted to have connection also to the family room and the kitchen. But by the time you're getting back to the kitchen, it's a less public area. So our opening here, instead of a full wall, you want to be able to see to the back of the house. So there's that detail. It's similar in origin to the Campbell house, right, that has those half walls with posts on it.
So would that style predate Craftsman?
Right around the same time. Yeah. This is the kitchen in that house. So, Craftsman bordering on the Queen Anne style, but same thing, emphasizing the horizontal. A little bit of detail in here that's more Craftsman. Instead of a cove, that's an angle like for the Craftsman brackets. Handmade tiles that have a real textural interest. A really good place to get beautiful tiles, Craftsman type tiles, is Pratt & Larson. They make custom tiles in the most incredible array of colors you can imagine, in different glazes. Salt glaze or copper glaze, or just ordering your kitchen backsplash tiles from them, which is pretty amazing stuff. It's all handmade. A little nook in the corner of this house in the family room. Again, these little inexpensive built-ins do a lot to add that feeling to the room. And mudroom that maybe that is for. Oh, this is my last project. So this project is a little Craftsman bungalow, like the little ones that I've shown you throughout this slide presentation. Little 1-story bungalow, had an attic and a tiny little staircase, so it really wasn't usable. These owners wanted to open up the house. It was a dining room, a kitchen room, a living room, and a hallway with doors off of it, very closed in. They wanted to open it up, and then we built a dormer on the back of the house for a master suite, and I think there's a child's room. And we did this more than 20 years ago. The photographs aren't great because they're scans of the original film photographs. But as I was looking at this just the other day, thinking, it's interesting to me, I don't know how you feel about it, but in my mind the house hasn't dated. So that staircase is new. Here's the kitchen and dining room. So you come in the front door, here's the dining area. So the kitchen is completely opened up. It's pretty hard to see here, but there's a nook around the stove. The ceiling drops and the cabinets and the side walls create this nook. So they have a really nice, big, fancy stove. And symmetrical cabinets on either side, and it's in a nook. So it kind of has the feeling of fireplaces in the original homes, right? And often I feel when I'm designing kitchens that the stove and the big hood are kind of, can be a focal point in the kitchen. So you want to kind of let it be the star of the kitchen. And putting this thing in a nook really helps the kitchen start to feel like a Craftsman kitchen because of that architectural surrounding. And here's your bedroom upstairs and your dormer. So we built a nook around the bed and then walk-in closets behind. So instead of a separate room for the closet, it was just building this niche and made the room still feel kind of open, but still intimate, and the bed feels kind of protected and obviously modern, but it has these Craftsman elements within the home. So I think that's it.
One dumb question here.
Yeah, no dumb
Can you have a gambrel roof and have it be a Craftsman like that one on the photo on the, is that a Craftsman? With a gambrel roof?
Yeah, you're talking about this one back here?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know.
It's a stretch.
I had a hard time finding it.
So if it's not a Craftsman, could it be a, would it be a Queen Anne, or I don't know.
Dutch?
Yeah, it's a variety of Queen Anne.
It's a variety of Queen Anne?
Yeah.
Queen Anne style?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the style that followed Craftsman was neo-colonial. And I would say that probably falls into that category. So colonial can be Dutch colonial or New England colonial, or there's all kinds of colonial styles. But after Craftsman, more of these houses were built, and the little colonial house you see around it have the little kind of Roman columns at the front door. That's all neo-colonial.
But there's a lot of these mixed in
I am.
this same neighborhood with the Craftsman.
Yeah.
Curious, a lot of the kitchens you can find have wood cabinets, and a lot of the stuff you see today that maybe is trending is blues and greens painted shaker cabinets. With
Yeah.
those, the painting of cabinets have been traditional in the Craftsman original home.
Pretty rare.
Rare.
It's always natural wood, either stained or waxed or buffed. Again, because they're trying to think of the theory behind it, they're trying to make the connection to landscape and natural materials.
With some of these homes that add in the second floor, do you have to redo the foundation, or are these homes able to support another floor?
Yeah. So, in a nutshell, there are basic requirements the city code enforces if you want to put a second story on, and that is you have to have a foundation with a footing. So there's the concrete wall, and then it flips out down to the ground, right? If you want to put a second story on your house, if you don't have that footing underneath your foundation wall, you have to rebuild the footing. Yeah. And that's doable. There's ways to do that. A lot of these houses that were built in the early 1900s have a concrete wall, doesn't have any reinforcing in it, and that seems to be okay with the city. But their footing is just like this little slump of concrete, like boom, like this, right? It's not much of a, now you have a square wall with a square footing. And if you have a minimum of 3 inches in that little slump on either side of the wall, and it's at least 4 inches thick, that'll pass. So if you're thinking of a second story addition, you have to dig down and find out what kind of a footing you've got to start with. Yeah.
I heard you mention a couple times 4 square. Now, is that an actual style, or is that just a cheap way to make a house?
What would you say? It's a type.
So bungalow type.
Bungalow type, Craftsman style.
Thank you.
From a pro. Yes.
We live in a very modest bungalow, Craftsman bungalow. But we're looking at, I'm sitting here in a wheelchair. It's not, it's a transfer chair, so I can do some walking and I can still get up the stairs. But if we want to age in place, we got to figure out a way to find a wheelchair access into that house. Has anybody come to you about building a creative way that doesn't detract from the Craftsman?
Well, if the Craftsman was done well, it wouldn't have any steps at all. So ideally, a Craftsman would be pretty easy to retrofit for your needs. But here in Seattle, we have so many hills that it's very rare to find a Craftsman house that doesn't have steps, right? So that's the challenge. I mean, I would think the way I would approach your house, if you have steps, it's an existing house, you have steps, would be to think about maybe re-landscaping the access into the house in a way that kind of terraces up with ramps that are discrete getting into your house, and that would enhance the idea of the landscape, you know, the landscape connection with the house. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. You know, this would have anybody come to, I mean, there's all this, we're always talking about aging in place, it's like, you know, that homes, less steps.
Yeah.
And we, you know, we have 6 or 7 steps getting into the front door or getting into the back door.
Yeah.
And I've been told you really can't do a straight ramp because the pitch would be too much.
Too steep, right. So you're going to have to kind of go back and forth and design that in a way that doesn't look like it's a ramp. So you can
Right.
Right. We have people, clients come to us with aging in place as our criteria,
Right.
and we have found that the mid-century homes are probably best suited for that
Right.
because they're usually one floor.
Right.
They may or may not be lower to the ground. That's a whole different lecture.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Yeah.
I've toured the Campbell house, I used to live down in Pasadena. There is no nails in that house.
Okay.
From my understanding, they're all pegs.
Yeah.
And I can't remember what the connection was, but Green and Green were also studied in
Yeah.
Japan. This is where they came up with that.
Those incredible joints. Yeah, all the joinery, the Japanese joint. It's amazing. I mean, you could never build a house like that unless you were, you know, Paul Allen or something. If any of you get a chance, if you find yourself in the Pasadena area, you can go on a tour of these homes in Pasadena. Highly recommend it. And they have a neighborhood house tour once a year. It's usually in October.
They're going to show the bungalow.
All right.
Saturday,
Yeah. It's that neighborhood. Yeah. It's just beautiful. Other questions? Yeah.
Speaking of nails, my house has an exterior feature that I like to restore. And each of the boards, pieces on the lower half of the house, each one has an extra large nail. Like there's 2
Oh,
of each one.
interesting. Yeah.
And they're bigger now than I find on for right now. Do you have an idea where I might get those?
You should be able to find. Does anybody hear her question? A woman has the big spikes with the pyramidal nail heads. I'm thinking on.
No, they're just flat.
They're just flat.
Exterior
So
flat.
they would have been hand forged nails on the lower courses of her siding. And she's wondering where she can get those nails. I'm sure you can find them somewhere online if you look. Yeah. There's a name for those nails, and I don't know what it is.
They're short.
Really big.
You just squared it.
Yes.
If, again, kind of a pretty traditional, fairly modest Craftsman home, if you wanted to put a garage, like a one-car, kind of old style kind of garage up front, do you have any recommendations for how you would do that, what kind of maintain or kind of provide that Craftsman?
Yeah, ideally you would separate from the house. First of all, for code, if you have a separate garage in your property, if you're building a new garage, you have to be 5 feet away from the house.
You have to.
You have to. It's a fire thing. If you connect it to the house, it's called an attached garage. And then you have to respect your side and front yard setbacks. It's attached. If it's not attached, you can put it in the rear yard or side yard usually. Right. If you have your if you have space on your lot, you keep it attached, and it has its own big roof, and put a third door style garage door on. Put some windows in it, you know, make it look like a not more compound house. Any other questions? I should wrap up. One more there.
Just, you talk about being very low from the ground, but so many of the Craftsmans I see have porches.
They all have porches.
I mean, that are raised up.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Right. Well, again, I think that's because of the topography here, in many cases. If you think of the Craftsmans that I showed you that are down in California, they're all much lower than the ground. And the porch might come down to a patio, or around the side of the house there might be a patio, but they are intentionally kept low if they can.
But one of our problems here was the daylight basements and then things being up on a hill. You know, depends on what side of the cut you're on. So that had an effect on the
That's
the
a really good
bungalow.
point, because probably all the Craftsman houses we think of here in town have basements. And in California, they never had basements,
Yeah.
so they could be lower.
But that was done because they could put coal into a draft furnace. It didn't have to have a fan.
Yeah.
And
California, they probably didn't have furnaces.
what's that?
In California, the California houses probably didn't have
That's
furnaces.
right, and that's why the California houses could be really dark,
Uh-huh.
because you would come in and it would be warm. And then here, people tended to paint over the dark stuff because they were coming in from a dark world.
Well, I have to confess, when we moved into our little Craftsman, 30 years ago, it was all natural wood, all the wainscoting and everything,
Yeah.
and it was so dark. All this fur everywhere, right? It's like, oh, I'm inside of a tree and so we painted all that wood.
Yeah,
And
there
it
you
was
go.
like, oh, I'm gonna paint this, but I can't stand it. And I was really happy with how it turned out. I was careful about our color choices, but we had to do it.
Yeah, I know, that's what I mean. That's why I think we tended to paint ours pretty quick.
Confessions about.
Well, I'm glad to know you did it, but mine was already done years before I moved.
With good old lead paint.
No joking.
Yeah.
You're the people that the next generation cusses.
No, I'm sure. All right, well, thank you all for coming.
Thanks a lot.